What exactly is an investor mindset? At the events I attend, people often ask me, what is that one characteristic that all investors must have? What is that way of thinking, that mindset, that routine people need to have to become better investors and achieve more success in their professional lives? And the answer isn't easy and depends on each of us. There are obviously certain rules and certain areas of focus, certain routines that everyone should have. But I'm going to do something a little different, guys, because I'm going to share with you what has worked well for me. And just so you have an idea, I developed around my teenage years a focus that I hadn't had until then. And for example, one of the things I used to spend money on, and I basically had no money at that time when I was a teenager, one of the things I spent money on was books. I loved reading, I loved acquiring knowledge. However, books are expensive in Portugal. So, one of the things I did was I started writing book reviews on the internet, and I started receiving free books from publishers, and this allowed me, for example, to achieve my first dream, which was to have a giant library with thousands of books. Today, I have a library with more than 2,200, 2,300 books, and I must have read about 70% or 80% of those books. But it was something very focused, where in reality, I worked for free and was paid in books. Is it ideal? It depends. I wanted to save money on books. I wanted to acquire knowledge because I was investing in myself. I'm not saying this is a good strategy. It was just the strategy I came up with. Along with that, I always tried to have 2 jobs. Having 2 jobs, especially at the beginning of your professional life, is very important. It's really important because you're never going to earn much at the start. In Portugal, you have to help your parents financially, you have other expenses, and you also want to have a bit of fun with your friends, whatever it may be. So, in reality, having 2 ways to make money, having 2 sources of income is very important. I'm not saying you have to do it all the time, but most of the time you need to be able to do it. To this, add 2 things I didn't have, but trained myself to develop. A constant focus on becoming more and more productive. It's something that right now is basically a daily thing. Every day I ask myself how I can become just a little bit more productive. And the upgrades are slow, but from one year to the next, if you look a year ahead, the increase in productivity is huge. So imagine this. I had my job, and there were several times when I was working somewhere and realized I couldn't progress. Even within the company itself, I was completely blocked by countless factors. So okay, I worked there 8 hours a day, gave it my all, learned as much as I could, but then I had another job where I earned more money, where I tried to grow and learn, and then I'd still come home and read, learn, study, all those things. And it's not just studying what I worked on, it's studying a bit about everything. So you also develop another ability to argue, so you can talk about topics that are outside your field of work. And ideally, you should be able to do a lot of this before you get married, before you become a father or mother, and if possible, also before you move out of your parents' house. So I managed, and I didn't have this, I wasn't born this way, I trained to be like this. I managed to develop a mindset that is every day, I have to be more productive than the day before, or find ways to be more productive than the day before. And I have to learn more, I have to know more, and I have to evolve, because it's perfectly normal that there are phases in our lives when we feel tired. Because life sometimes also hits us hard. Because we're working too much. Because the boss is terrible. Because someone has a health problem. Because you have a health problem. Because you have to help with this or that. Because you're having an issue with someone you care about. There are reasons that will demotivate you, that will bring you down, and that will take you away. Time and focus from what should be your path, because your path of personal growth will, sooner or later, provided you also know how to be critical and smart, sooner or later it will have an impact on your professional life. Of course, there are areas that are easier than others. Yes, I am in an area where it's easier. In Portugal, the field of programming and technology, in a few years it won't be at this stage, but even within the field of programming and technology, I had to find out. What was the right path for me? What was the best path? The path where I could stand out, and within that path, how could I become more productive so that the journey would be faster? And along the way, you have to surround yourself with people who really have a focus that's at least somewhat similar to yours. Or, in other cases, people who might not even have that focus, who might want to have a chill life while you're there constantly fighting for growth. But those people around you help you, support you, understand you, because many times you'll be at your limit. You're going to work 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, every day, because it's 8 or 9 hours for your job, plus 2 or 3 for your other job, plus 1 or 2 for yourself, for your own growth. And this is overwhelming for the people who live around you. And in the midst of all this, you don't have to be, or at least I always tried not to be greedy, but to be ambitious. The difference is huge. Excessive greed will lead you to take risks, to make decisions, to speed up a process that doesn't have to be fast and usually isn't fast, which is going from a very poor family to financial freedom, right? Retiring at 40. But really, it's about not having major financial problems. Doing this within a single generation is very complex. You start working at 16, 17, 18, and by the time you reach 40, you're much more at ease. 10 times, 100 times more at ease than you were at 18, 19, 20 years old. This is very complex. If you're on your own, you're going to fail. If the people around you don't understand, don't help you, don't support you, you're going to fail. So, what can help you guys? You have to develop a taste for it, for knowledge. You have to develop a passion for what you do. If you're really in a field you don't like, I'm not telling you to change jobs, obviously. I'm telling you to look for other things you enjoy. And in your spare time, get good at it. Become knowledgeable in what you like. And then, take a risk. Of course, taking risks when you have kids in school or in college or whatever it may be, or in private school, is very difficult. But when you're not yet at that stage where you have several people depending on you, you have to give it your all. I, for example, was lucky in one thing. There was a time in my early 20s when I had a job that was exhausting, both physically and mentally. It was surreal. Also because of the responsibility that position carried. And at that time, I more or less figured out where my limit was. Where my limit was for... From this point on, I would hit burnout. From here, I would become demotivated. From here, I could fall into depression, whatever it might be. I never actually reached those points, but I realized I was close to my limit. That's really good. At that age, when you're in your early 20s, you realize where your limit is, keeping in mind that over time, your limit will probably decrease because you'll have other problems, other responsibilities, other concerns. And physically, things change as well. A 25-year-old can handle one pace, a 45-year-old can handle another. So, what do you have to do when you're 40 or 45 years old? If you can't handle as much, as you get older, you have to be incredibly more experienced, more knowledgeable, more productive, and, once again, always focused on how you can become better. How do I become better? How do I become more knowledgeable? How do I become more productive? How do I make sure that every day I still have the drive to keep evolving? And this ties back to one of the last videos I made here on the channel, and I got a lot of support from you guys, and I appreciate it. A lot. I showed a small dream I had a few years ago, and when I say a few years, it was probably since I was about 15. Or something like that, which was to have a cockpit to play games. I've always really enjoyed playing racing games. It's something that helps me unwind, and this is a very important part. It's about having your own moments for yourself, to unwind, to leave everything behind. It doesn't have to be about improving yourself 24 hours a day. No, you also need to slow down from time to time and do the things you enjoy. It took me a long time to make this dream come true. Why? First, because a cockpit with a steering wheel and a monitor costs around 3,000 euros. And there are many other priorities in my life than spending 3,000 euros on something I'll use for 20 minutes, half an hour, just to clear my head. But there comes a time when you have to make certain dreams come true. I fulfilled the dream of having a library. Then I had the dream of owning a house. I did it. Then I dreamed of having a Tesla. And I did it. No rush. I could have bought the Tesla I wanted a few years earlier. But it wasn't the right time. Those years before were the time for me to invest money. To invest in myself. To buy stocks, to buy ETFs, to buy Bitcoin, whatever it might be. So I was driving a car that was falling apart, even though financially I probably could have had a Tesla at that time. But I kept sacrificing certain things to have others, to build a launchpad. Everything I've told you so far is about building a launchpad, so that there comes a time when you're going so fast that it all becomes easy. And I still haven't reached the part where it becomes easy. Money still doesn't fall from the sky for me. I still have to work hard. But it's much easier now. I'm much more productive. I earn much more per hour, so to speak, than I used to. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Stagnation will blow up in your face because it will demotivate you, because it will cause you countless problems. The vast majority of stress you can have in life comes either from health or from lack of money. Lack of money leads to health problems. It's the issue of not having money. It has a huge impact on your life. Because you have to take public transportation, because you have to wake up earlier, because you have to sleep less, because you have to clean your whole house. It goes from the simplest things like me, with these monitors behind me. I produce faster than if I only had a tiny monitor. I produce more, there's no other way. But it also impacts the most important things, which is you. With little money, you'll end up buying lower quality food. Maybe you won't really have a relaxing vacation, because since you don't have money for the holidays, you won't go anywhere far from home. And you end up painting the house and tidying up and doing other things because you don't have the money to pay someone else. All of this matters. So you have to build your own launchpad. And you need to have goals, you need to have dreams. I had my library, my house, my car, a cockpit, a trip here or there. I still have countless dreams I want to achieve and haven't yet accomplished. I want to go to the Maldives and I still haven't been. Could I go? I could. But I felt it still wasn't the right time because there were other priorities, other things to do, other things where I needed to spend, so to speak, my time and my money. Yes. But I hope to get there one day. And then there are still two things that I think are really very important. The first is something that happened to me, which was there were several times in my life when the people I spent time with had more money than I did. They had more means to go out to dinner twice every weekend, so 7 or 8 times a month. I didn't have that ability. You have to know how to say no. And this applies to your personal life. With your friends, with the person you live with, at your job, you have to know how to say no. It's not about saying no just because you feel like it, but sometimes you really have to say no. You have to say no, and it's hard to say no to your friends and say, I can't go on vacation. With you, I don't have the money, but I'm not going to go into debt. Just to go with you. And maybe some of my friends didn't mind having €0 in their account just to go on vacation with friends, but for me, that was not the strategy. So, being able to say no is fundamental. The other very important thing is not to compare yourself to others. Seriously, I know this is a big cliche, but don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to yourself. I compare myself to myself, more or less from year to year. I look at the Luis I was a year ago on various levels. Knowledge, financial stability, how much I earn, what I have at home, what my assets are. And every year I have evolved. If there ever comes a year when I don't evolve, it's not a problem. It's okay. It's about turning things around. It's about continuing. It's about not letting it demotivate us. But seeing that you are evolving, that's the best way for you to understand your own progress. It's not by comparing yourself to someone else. You don't know how the other person is doing. It doesn't make sense. They're completely different realities. You might be best friends. Your reality is different. Maybe he comes from a wealthier or poorer family, or earns more or less, or is stuck or not, or looks super happy on social media. But at home, life is hell. There are countless things. Compare yourself to yourself on every level. And if there's any factor in your chart where you're going down, like quality of life at home is declining, fix that problem. When I talk about being productive or successful, it's not just about money. In fact, money is just a small part of it. What's much more important is being successful at home. What's much more important is having health. If you manage to have it all, that's amazing. And every now and then, remember that you also need to treat yourself. You have to, and even more importantly, treat the people who help you. Because it's very hard, folks, to get anywhere on your own. I can guarantee you, where I am today, I didn't get here alone. There are 5 or 6 people in my life who have been fundamental over the last 20 years for me to go from where I was to where I am now. Without them, maybe I'd be halfway there, or a third of the way, or I might have given up, which is by far the worst. It's when you give up. And the easiest way for you to give up is not having support. And in the midst of all this, since you're trying to have a winning investor mindset, and when I say investor, I don't just mean investing in stocks, but investing in yourself. But from the moment you have that mindset, you have to move forward. And do you know why you have to start investing? Because these charts, statistically, when you do a good analysis, when you invest well, statistically, the probability of this happening is higher than the opposite. The probability of this happening, as you can see, is much higher. It's you getting here, looking at this ETF that tracks the S&P 500, and seeing that in 2020 it was valued at $45, and now it's at $110. And in 5 years, it more than doubled. So the best time to start investing was yesterday, as long as you have at least some basic knowledge. What to do. If you really know what to do, if you've been watching my videos, reading books, whatever it may be, start investing. And in those months when you think you're going to invest €100, try to invest 110. And then, in those months when you can usually invest €120, try to invest 130 and keep increasing an amount that statistically grows in the long run. Of course, if you start buying at the top and then it drops, you panic, obviously. But statistically, in the long run, this usually works out well. One thing is certain, if you don't invest, inflation will make your money lose value, and you'll lose purchasing power. There's nothing here that guarantees you'll make money. Nothing. And there's no one who can guarantee that for you. There's no investment that is a sure guarantee that you'll make money, that it will appreciate. But statistically, it tends to happen much more often than the opposite. Guys, today's video sponsor is XTB, a broker regulated in Portugal, and therefore, being regulated in Portugal, it has to be safe, It has to be transparent, and your money is protected. It's secure up to 20,000 euros per account. I'll leave the link below so you can sign up. XTB regularly has promotions. For example, the current campaign is in the link. It's a welcome bonus campaign. It's very simple, guys. You come here and sign up. Link below. You come here, sign up. 10 minutes. You transfer money here, buy something, anything. A share of Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, whatever you want. And you'll be able to take advantage of the campaigns XTB is running. And even if there aren't any campaigns when you sign up, it's one of the few brokers regulated in Portugal, regulated in Europe, and it offers these safeguards. That's very, very important. One of the things I have now is this channel. And obviously, I make money with this channel. I don't make a lot, but I do make money with this channel. I earn, and what I hope is that you earn as well. And the more you earn, the more you come back here. The better my service is, the better the value I provide to you, the more you return, the more my channel grows, and we all win. And that's the idea here, at least. In my case, it's a second source of income for you. It can be a way for you to learn more about investments. Guys, this is a completely different video from the rest. I could spend half an hour here talking about the things I've done. Some went well, others didn't. Some things work well for me, but they might not work well for you. But there are things that are very hard to achieve if you don't have other things around you, both here and in your life. And obviously, you have to be lucky. If you're not lucky, if you have a health problem with yourself, your parents, or whoever, and suddenly your life falls apart. The company you work for has a financial problem, your life falls apart, and you lose a lot of time. It takes you a while to get back up. Luck is very important. Guys, I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate your messages. You already know, I take a while to reply. A hug to everyone. I hope I was helpful. See you next time.